This is Ben Woods interviewing for the Oklahoma Living Legends. I am interviewing with Mr. Manderville Strong, S-T-O-N-G, who is a farmer from Cleo Springs. Is that correct?
I'm from Cleo Springs now.
Yes, you live here now. And his father made the 1893 run. Who was your father?
George Strong.
Mm-hmm. And you were 3 years old when you came. I'm sure you heard some of the stories he told you about the run of 93. Could you recall any?
Well, he made the run before that, before 93.
Mm-hmm.
But he made it on a white mule. He run from near Arkansas City down where Blackwell is, you know. He went south down through there, but he never did stake a claim then.
Mm-hmm.
But he come back about 2 years after that. Him and his brother-in-law, a man by the name of Mr. Edwards, and they filed on claims in Cheyenne Creek. That's 10 miles west of Fairview and 2 north.
Mm-hmm. And you came here in right after that, about 3 years old.
Yeah, I was born in 1890. I was just putting there 4 years old. We got here in the first part of October or the last of September. I don't know which. You know, I was little and keep dates. I couldn't hardly keep them.
What's the first thing you remember in this area?
Well, I want to go back just a little further. I remember when we come. Okay. We had 5 wagons. There's 5 wagons of us, the 2 families. And we moved in there. We come through Arkansas City. That's about the first place I can remember. And we come on down through Caldwell. We come on through in there to cross the Salt Fork River, I believe someplace in east of Cherokee, I don't know where. And them roads now, they didn't run straight to the section line in them days. They just went whichever way they wanted to go. Well, when we got to the river, them rivers, we always double teamed across them rivers because them loads was heavy. One team couldn't hardly get them across. But on the hard roads, they got along fairly good with them. But anyhow, out in the middle of the river was a big old prairie schooner, one of them big ones. At the end of it went out this way, and a big old wagon. They had 2 yoke oxen to that. I can remember them see them oxen just plain as it was yesterday. And they were out into a hole of water with them, and they couldn't get them out of there. And the folks stopped and talked to some of them, asked them if they needed help. If they did, well, we'd help them. And they said, no, he said, we'll make them pull it out of here after a bit when they get cooled off. So we went on. Next place is when we come in down where we homesteaded. There was one family in the same section by the name of Gosneys. And they heard us a coming. It was after dark when we got there. I can remember us getting there. And we settled in a little clump of timber and put up some tents and stuff like that. So we built houses on that place. I was small, but I can remember all this stuff. And he built my uncle's house first. And then he built our house. Ours was about 16 foot square, logged. You dug in the ground just about as high as my head now, into the back end, and about 4 feet at the front end, and then it's logged up to the roof. But we had a shingle roof on our house, made out of lumber. But we got that all done in the fall and got moved in for winter. Well, during the winter, my father, he started breaking sod, put out a crop, so he put it out in the spring. You know, he broke quite a bit of that land. He had 35 acres, I believe, about broke. And early in spring, down come some ranchmen from up southwest. I'm trying to think of their name. I'll think of it now. It's the McCracken Ranch. I don't know if you ever heard of it or not. The McCracken Ranch. There's 3 of them. And they had big 6-shooters up on their hip. And you know, if I ever was scared in my life, I was scared then. I figured that here's our end. We're going to be ended right here. Them guys, they was rough as a cob. Don't think they wasn't. They was rough. They talked mean to my dad. Said, you just well move out of here, you sod busters. Leave. I didn't run. I stayed with Dad, but I guess I was just spellbound or something. I don't know what. I stayed there. And it's over. And they went on down to the next place. My uncle told him the same thing. Went over to Gordon, told him the same thing. Well, we all stuck together just like brothers. That was our job. That's all the law we had was them shotguns we had. Every one of them, folks had a shotgun. We had one, my uncle had one, and Gordon's had one. Well, by the way, we woke up one morning in the spring down just about time to plant stuff. Here was about 80 head of them big longhorn steers all around the house, every place around there. Well, we couldn't get out of the house hardly because they'd take after you. Them things had horns just like this. And so they was there all day. At night, my dad had sneaked out and he managed to get a hold of the horses, got them hooked to the wagon, so he's safe. Well, he come in the house and I seen him pick that shotgun down off of some pegs that drove in them logs. And he picked it down and he went and got in the wagon and he went toward my uncle's down that way. And we stayed in the house and around there and just got about halfway between sundown and dark. I heard them shotguns go off. Every one of them, I think, shot at them cattle, and we had a bunch of those old red-bone bawling hounds, and they set them onto them. And it just sounded like a freight trailer running. All them cattle running, and they run into ditches, fell into old banks and stuff like that. And them old guys down the next day, and boy, they was really warm under the collar then, because they claimed it killed 15 of them cattle, and crippled a lot more. And that's just about the way it was. They was really mad then, but we never had no more trouble with them. That stopped it. And I guess if the folks had just taken that, they probably left them there forever. They would eat us up. I expect run us out.
I understood that you remembered some tales of Ike Black and Dick Yeager and some of the. Tell about that.
Yeah, Dick and Black come by our house 2 or 3 different times. They'd stop and get drinks of water. We never had no trouble with them. They'd always a horseback. One time they come by, the last time I think they came by, they come by and got a drink of water and went on. Here a little bit, here come 3 of them cedar marshals, they call them, and marshals after him. And they stopped and got a drink of water too, and they wanted to know if that wasn't Dick and Black. And we told him, he said it was, but they'd got on about a mile up the road, and they got on their horse and started right on up the road behind them. And they went clear on out of sight. That's the last we seen of them birds.
What were the marshals after them for at that time?
Oh, they robbed people's all. I don't think they'd killed anybody. But they stole from old man Guard. One of the neighbors was down the valley. They stole a horse from him, but they left him an old plug. And then another feller down there, the name of the Morgans. Clint Morgan had a 45 ivory-handled Colts. Dick wanted that gun so bad he didn't know what to do. So, but this here Morgan, he wanted to trade that gun for a saddle pony. Well, Dick found out just about what kind of a pony he wanted, and he went up to Freeman up here, Freedom, and he stole the saddle pony, took it down there, and traded it to him for that there 6-shooter. And then he wrote that fellow a card and told him where he'd find his horse. He come down and took it away and said, and he seen, Dick wasn't a very big man. He seen that he'd have to kill Sid if he got that gun, if he just took it away from him. He was one of them guys that didn't believe him and letting anybody roll over him. He knew he was going to have trouble with that man. So he'd rather do that than to have trouble with him and have to kill him or something like that, because he knew there'd be a posse after him. And that's about the way that ended up. Of course, we had a pretty hard time getting the right kind of food them days. No fruit. You see, we was there. We had meat. Father raised hogs and cattle, and we drove through 2 head of cows, brought them through. We had a man that walked and drove them cattle as we come, and he had about 5 or 6 head of them. And my uncle had some, and we had some, and we got through with them. But Daddy had money enough. He bought some more cattle, and we soon had cattle. We had milk and butter, but we had no refrigeration whatsoever. Them days, no such a thing as that. We didn't know what a refrigerator was, anything like that. And our meat, we butchered hog. We put that down in what they call a brine cure or a salt cure in a barrel. covered it with brine, and weighed it down. And then when we go to eat that meat, we had to parboil it a while to get that salt out of it before we eat that meat. And that's about the way it is. Of course, we killed wild meat too. We had quite a lot of birds, quail, and my daddy killed 2 different deers during the time the meat was short, so hard to get. But finally, we got through. The valley was well settled up, and I left out of there myself. I was a man growing, and I went to Fairview and went to work in automobiles.
Did you ever see any bear?
No bear, but I seen a mountain lion. There, see, that's right by the mountains there, and rocks and holes, big holes, canyons. He liked to run me off. I was just a kid, and I went on the east side of the place to get the milk cows, and I was bringing them by, and the corn was about as high as the head, and it was just tossing out. And when them cattle got to a certain place, they just rushed on down through there. And that old horse I had, he went to snorting, and he took me down through there too. But I stayed on him. I stayed on. And when he got down there about 150, 200 yards, well, I stopped him. Got him stopped, and I looked back, and this here thing come out of the corn. And he come out there and sat down, and he wasn't a bit afraid. Now, I had an old dog, and that dog, he wouldn't get near it. And he just sat there and looked at that dog. He wasn't a bit afraid of that. But he went on to the hills to the east there, about a half a mile to the mountains. And I come on around and told my father, and he went out there with a shotgun and buckshot, but he never did find him. I don't know whatever come of him. But we had a few of them in there.
Did you know any other outlaws?
What?
Did you know any other outlaws? Did you see or know any others of the outlaws?
Well, there was a man, I didn't see him, but run with Dick and Black, the name of Freeman. He was an outlaw.
Where'd you go to school?
There at Cheyenne Valley.
Tell about that, what it was like.
It was a log building, about 16 foot square, the first one. And it's chopped in this way at the corners and pinned with pins. They bored holes in it and drove pins in that, to hold it. And I don't know just what kind of seats we did have. I had boards and everything else for seats to start with. And the first school I went to was just 4 months. And the next one was 4 months. And then the next one I think was 5 months. Much as I ever went to school was 6 months. And I got about to the 8th grade, and that's as far as I ever got, because there's no high school. There's no high school for me to go to. No place to go.
How many students did you have in those small schools?
Well, before I quit, they built a new schoolhouse. Mm-hmm. And it was all about 30, 40 feet long, say 30 feet wide. There's 42 of us going there. You can see now how the valley had settled up in a few years' time. They've almost a family on every quarter section. And now there's only about 3 or 4 families living in the valley. They own the whole thing about.
What about farming in those early days? Can you describe farming compared with today?
Yeah, we just, I tell you, my uncle and us, we had one lister to plant corn with. That was between us, and it's a walking lister. They had the planting attachments onto it. I don't know if you've ever seen one or not. It's a walking lister. Well, my dad got sick. He had erysipelas in his ear, and I had to run that. I was just a kid, and I couldn't lift that lister around. I had to make the horses pull that lister around, but I listed corn, and I got by with it. It made it. All right, I got a pretty good stand and everything. But the next planter we had was one of them 2-row planters. It had a runner on each side. I don't know, maybe you've seen one of them. Had a runner, a shoe, and a dropper to drop the corn in here, but it didn't run from the high wheels. I had to sit up there all day long, jerk that every time, just so far. That would drop 2 grains, one in each one of these shoes. I'd jerk that lever back and forward. Boy, I'd get so tired of that.
What all did you plant?
What?
What all did you grow?
Well, we grew corn most of them days, and then wasn't long we was growing what they call kaffir corn, just white, and some of it was red. We had some red, we had some white both, what they call kaffir corn. But they bred that all into kind of a maize and some other kinds of stuff. They got big names for it, big numbers for it nowadays. But it originated from the calf of corn. Then we had another thing. We had to raise a strip of cane, and it was sorghum cane. We had to strip that cane and take it to the cane mill. We had a cane mill amongst us and make sorghum. We had to strip enough of that to make us a barrel, and the man that cooked it off, make him a barrel for him to sell so he could get his money. And we done that right along. We'd have to strip that cane. You had to get the leaves all of it down to the stalk. It'd be as high as this ceiling, some of it. And you'd have to pull the leaves off. And then you'd cut the stalk and put it on the wagon. We'd haul it to the cane mill.
Did you grow any wheat?
What?
Did you grow any wheat?
Yes, we finally got to wheat. We got to growing wheat. When I was about 18 years old, we got to growing wheat. Maybe I was 20, I don't know long there. But the first crop of wheat we raised, why, my dad had granulated eyes, and he had to stay, and he was the one we always depended on. He stacked the wheat. We had headers and barges. I don't know if you ever seen anything like that or not. Header barges? Well, that's what we had. And got up to harvest, and Dad wasn't able to get out there. He just had a little hole through one of Mother's old bonnets, slat bonnets. You remember women folks had them? He had just down like that so he could see a little bit out through. That's all the light he could stand. And I kept asking him, I said, Dad, who's going to strike this wheat? Oh, he said, we'll figure out something. Got right down the day started, and he said, you're going to do it. I stacked 42 stacks that year. 42 stacks of wheat.
What in that early period would you say was the highlight experience that you had? The one thing that.
Well, I jumped one period of stuff what we raised. We went into the broom corn first before we went into wheat. You've heard of broom corn, haven't you? We raised that for I don't know, several years. And boy, I pulled broom corn. And we baled broom corn, we seeded broom corn, we hauled it in. Oh, it's the meanest job I ever had. I was awful glad when we got rid of that stuff. But that was our money-making crop a while.
Oklahoma is still broom corn country. The state is.
Down by Lindsay is the place where they raise the most of it now.
Yeah.
We tried to, my uncle tried to, one patch of that standard, you know, that big standard they talk about. But it all goosenecked down. We never tried any more. It wouldn't work up here. It grew too high. Now down in Lindsay, I don't know how it grows. It may grow short. But up here it got so high and it just goosenecked over that way and hang down, you know. And when you got the head of that thing, you made the broom out of, it had a crook in it, just like this, just like you break it like that. And it was no good. They never did get that sold, that there small patch we planted. They never did mount anything. They wouldn't buy it on account it had that, we call it gooseneck.
Yes.
No good.
Now you lived in this area until when?
Up here?
Yes.
I've just lived here about 25 years.
The Cleo area.
Yeah. Well, you can figure it up. I come down there. It's just in the corner of this county in 47, in February in 47. Now, how many years would that be?
Yeah, well, it'd be about 25 years.
Yeah, it's just right there.
Yeah.
I've lived down there. I got 440 acres down there and lots of pasture land.
What experiences in your community do you recall between, say, 1900 and 1910? Any events that took place that were memorable?
I'll tell you one of them. 1907, we had a depression. That's when we was raising broom corn too. My dad had $600 in the Fairview State Bank, and just closed up just like that. Couldn't get a penny of it out. Not a penny could you get. Run for about a month. Wouldn't allow us to write a check on it or nothing. And so it finally opened up. About a certain length of time, they opened up and went and let us take $5 a day. We could write a check for $5 a day. They had our grocery bill tied up. Boy, it was really tough. It was rough.
What about the Depression of the 30s?
The 30s, well, I was in Fairview. I was in the garage business when that happened, and off the farm. But it was rough. It really was rough. I made a living and got by and didn't have to work on PWA, but I was working on automobiles. I went to Kansas City before that and went through schooling on automobiles, and I was in the shop business. I would work on any kind of an automobile, any kind of a gas engine.
When did you start with automobiles? What year? About
25, when I was about 24 years old.
Could you describe the automobiles you worked with in those days and what it was like at that early?
Well, they were Fords mostly and Chevrolet. I owned a brand new 490 Chevrolet. I don't know if you ever seen one or not. You ain't old enough, I don't suppose, to see one if you ever saw one. You might have heard about them. Well, Fords, they were just a 4-cylinder engine outfit, just about like they've always been up till they made the Model A. Of course, at the time we were working on them, there's a lot of Model A's got out, but I owned a brand new Model T, a 24 Model T.
Tell about the grinding. You know, a lot of people, young people today have never seen or hardly conceive of starting a car by turning a crank in front of it. Tell about that and some of the hazards that happen.
Yeah, you could break your arm. If that happened to kick back, if you didn't know how to crank one, you'd get your arm broken. I seen two guys, different ones, that had their arm broken with Model Ts. One of them was a fellow named Oscar Howell. The other one was my cousin, Alvin Edwards. He lives in Fairview yet. He broke his arm with his Model T truck, cranking it. It backfired. And when it backfired, you see like that, you'd take this out of there and make clear around and hit you across the wrist with the handle. That's how it broke your arm. It'd round up and hit you across the wrist before you'd get away. And if you wanted to be safe, you wanted to push that crank in, pull it up, just push it in, pull it up. Never try to go over it, because if it kicked backward, jerked it out by your thumb, it'd come around and hit you over the wrist and break your arm. But they finally got starters on them. I was working in the Ford people when they got starters, and we put on starters, and some would have them taken off. We'd take them off, put them on the next fellas.
Why did they have them taken off?
They didn't want them. They didn't want to pay for them. They had made the machine a little higher, and they'd say, take them off. We'll crank them. But it wasn't long till they began to learn better. To step on that starter was just a lot better than pulling that crank.
It'd be hard to sell a crank today, wouldn't it?
Yeah. They don't put a crank on them today.
No, that's what I said. It'd be hard to sell that idea, wouldn't it?
That's right. You couldn't crank them. Not even the tractors. They don't have a crank on them.
Talk about the early tractors when you first started using a machinery on a farm.
Well, first one was, I and my brother bought the first tractor. I think it come to Cheyenne Creek, I and my brother, and it was an Avery. Name was an Avery. It was a 2-cylinder tractor. It done pretty good. We got along with it pretty good. That is after I had this schooling on gas engine stuff, and we got along with it pretty good. But some other guys didn't, on account of they didn't understand them. They was new to them. An old man, I'll get his name pretty soon. He lived down north there. He bought what they call a bull tractor. But it was a 3-wheeled outfit. It didn't last too long for him. If you went to turn the wrong way, and you had to plow on the ground, the thing would roll over with you. But if you turned the right direction, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Gene Nicholson is his dad. Old Frank Nicholson. He's the one who bought that. I couldn't think of their name right now. I finally thought of it. That's been years ago.
Did you ever use any of the old steam engines?
Oh yeah, we had a steam thresher.
Tell about it.
Well, yeah, we had trouble when we went to raising wheat to get machines in there to thresh this wheat, you know. We either bound it and put it in shocks, or we cut it with headers and put it in stacks. And so the whole valley, they kind of went together. I think there's 30 different farmers went in. They bought a big steam rig known as the Advanced Rumley tractor and separator. We run that for several years, wore it out, thrashing wheat with it. I hauled water to it a year or two, to that engine. You had to have a water tank and a team to haul water to that so to have water, you see. Steam is made out of water, you know, and you had to have water, and you had to keep putting plenty of it too. It took quite a bit a day to run that thing.
Now, are you farming now?
No.
What are you doing?
Oh yes, now down here, yes.
In Cleo?
Yeah.
Why did you go from mechanics back to farming?
Well, I was getting too old. I had too much rheumatism in my shoulders and stuff. I couldn't do that. I couldn't lay under a car and reach up above my head all the time. See, if I live December 15, I'll be 82 years old. And
so you were, and when you went to Cleo but you've been there, what, 25 years?
Yeah, that's just, that ain't right in Cleo. That's west of Cleo,
Yeah.
7 miles and 2 miles north.
But have you been back farming 25 years?
Yeah.
And you retired from the mechanical business about 55 or less than before you were 60.
Yeah, something like that, right there. But you see, I put 5 years, almost 5 years in the airfield. When I quit the mechanic business, I went to the airfields. And I started in at San Antonio field at Texas, San Antonio, Texas. We was there between 5 and 6 months. We was transferred back to Oklahoma City to Tinkerfield. And I put in almost 5 years. I liked about 40 days of making 5 years in the airfield. And then I come back up on this farm. I owned this land. I'd bought that during the early part of the war in '42. I bought that, and I had it in his renter on it. And I had him to move off, and we moved on that. I made up my mind to spend the rest of my life out where it'd be easier.
Swinging back into the early period, can you think of any other, I know we're getting fairly near the end of this tape, can you think of any other early stories or reminiscences that are particular interest, you might think?
Well, I don't know, really. Anything that'd hardly be worth telling.
Well, this has been an interview with Mr. Manderville Strong of Cleo Springs, Oklahoma, the interview being made in Alva on October 24th, 1972.